Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome to the call. Hello, hello. Happy Wednesday night. Glad you all are jumping on. We're going to give it another couple minutes to let all of our callers flood on in. Everyone get yourself a cup of tea or sit yourself down in a comfortable position. We'll be together for the next hour. All right. Great. Awesome. Cool. It's 7:01 where I am, out in Bozeman, Montana. Hello, everyone. I am Maddie Roach. I am XYPN's Director of Member Services. I am so honored to be able to host these monthly webinars for our non-members. Tonight, we have a really, really fabulous topic, and a topic that you'll likely be interested in. And those are the misconceptions of XYPN. Sometimes people wonder, I'm 45, am I too old to join XY? Things like that. Tonight, we're going to break down those barriers. I do recognize that membership can often feel like there's a curtain kind of separating non-member from member, and calls like this and the blogs that we write are really intended to let you peek behind that curtain and transparently see what membership is like before you join. It's very, very important to be able to feature members like our co-host tonight and the diversity of their backgrounds. It's one of the things that may be a misconception in and of itself, are who are the members of XYPN? What makes our community so wonderful? And those are the things that we're going to talk about tonight. Tonight we have two really, really great members. I'm so pumped to be able to be on with both of them, Ben Martinick and Michelle Underwood Gass. Both of them have been with us for a couple of years now. Ben almost 4, Michelle 2. They come from different backgrounds. One's a career changer, one isn't. One launched with us, one didn't. And we're going to be able to talk through all of those things. But before I start, I want to talk about just 3 quick things. First and foremost, after this call, you guys are going to get a special offer in your inbox. So go ahead and check that out. It is an XYPN Live special offer. I hope you get a kick out of it. I hope you use it. Keep your eyes peeled for that. Also, next month, we always got to be looking at next month, we will be hosting another call about the fees behind fee only, the hows, whys, and really the choosing of the fee structure. That is one of the things that so many members come into the membership wondering about, is how do we charge for the monthly retainer model? How do we charge for AUM? Whatever it is, we're going to be talking about that next month. And so we've submitted, or we dropped something in the chat for you to register for that. And finally, my third point is to use the question and answer tonight. I really do want to take some live questions. So many of you submitted great questions ahead of time, which I so appreciate. But go ahead and drop down any questions in the Q&A that you have, and I'll address them with the callers, with the members. So without further ado, I would love to have our wonderful members introduce themselves. So Michelle, would you start us off? Let us know kind of what you've built, where you're located, and a little bit about your firm, and then we'll ask Ben the same question.
Absolutely. I'm Michelle Gass, and I'm with Paradigm Advisors. I started the firm as an RIA fee only about 2 years ago. The firm itself has been around longer. We used to run hedge funds. We have an office in Dallas. We also have an office in Fayetteville, Arkansas. And it's been a really fun experience so far. I found XY early on in my venture into the fee-only RIA space, and it's been very beneficial.
Awesome. Great. Ben, how about you?
Sure. Yeah. My name's Ben Martinick. I own and operate Bonafide Finance. I launched that with the help of XYPN. I've got a client base. I'm up here in Bismarck, North Dakota, one of the few North Dakotans in the network. So I've got, I think 50% of my clients here in North Dakota, and the other 50% are scattered abroad that I've picked up through other lead generations. So I've got 15 to 20 clients at this point, and adding a few more every month or two. So it keeps growing and building. So yeah, the business-wise, I service young families, young professionals, folks usually in their late 20s to early 40s, who are looking to accumulate wealth. Many of them tend to be higher income earners, but not necessarily all of them. I do have a focus too in student loan debt and analyzing that and assessing it. And I work both transactionally with clients and then on an ongoing basis. So have various service levels depending on the needs of the client.
Love it. Awesome. Michelle, tell us about your journey in this industry. I think of the two of you, you started in the industry or have substantial time in the industry. Tell us kind of what, up until the point of launching your firm, what was that journey like?
Sure. So my background is tax. I was CPA in my first life. I moved from there to a family office and then moved into hedge funds, launching our own hedge funds in 92. So I dispel the myth that we're all in our 20s and 30s. I did that for 22 years, closed the hedge funds, gave all the money back to our investors, and went back to school and got my CFP, something I'd always wanted to do. It sort of really is a culmination, brings everything together. So yes, I've always been in the financial world, but a bunch of different roles throughout my career.
Great. And I'll ask about your aha moment of starting a fee-only firm in just a minute. But Ben, tell us about your journey into this space.
Yeah, it's a long one, so I won't tell you all of it. But the short of it is my graduate or my education wasn't in finance at all. It was in philosophy. I actually went on to have a master's degree in philosophy and thought I would get a doctorate and teach at the collegiate level. Very much enjoy deeper conversations and the study of intellectual history. But anyhow, I ended up having an awakening when I met a fella in grad school who suggested I go into business instead and do some real estate investing because that was hot back in the mid-2000s. And that started me down this path. The short story of it all is I ended up doing some truck driving to pay down my student loan debt with my wife, and then came across Dave Ramsey, who introduced me to the concept of the CFP, the Certified Financial Planner. And I started to think that maybe that would be the right career move for me. So shortly after getting off the road, I set out to establish my own business.
Love it.
And here we are.
Here we are. That's great. Michelle, what was your aha moment? You had an impressive career and all of a sudden you decided it was time for the CFP. What made you think that opening up your own firm was what you wanted?
Well, really, when I first started taking the CFP courses, it was something that had always been on my bucket list. And I was, I don't know that I was really into retirement, but I was toying with the idea of just doing something totally different and giving back. And when I got into those classes, I realized that this is really what I had always been looking for and what I never got. Despite being in the financial world, everybody thinks, oh, you're an accountant, you know taxes, you know investments, you've got it covered. But it really doesn't work that way. There's just a lot more to it. And so what I tried to create was what I wish I had always had, something that wasn't dependent on investments and me giving all my assets to someone to manage to get good advice and really looking at your whole life and what you want that to look like.
Yeah.
So that's how I ended up where I am.
Great. And then what was the decision that you were going to go with XY? When did you learn about XY and when did you pull the trigger?
Early on, I came to the conference in September, I believe, of 16 before I had set for the exam. And it was what I had in my mind I wanted to create, but I didn't know that it was out there. And then once I met the people there and looked at that model, it just makes a lot more sense to me. I wanted to really minimize the conflicts of interest. And I really wanted to provide financial advice and comprehensive whole life planning for people who either couldn't yet or didn't want to give all their assets to someone to manage to get that. So that's sort of the business we've built. Like Ben, high earners, but a lot of young professionals. Some of the ones are hedge fund veterans. So it's not that they couldn't give their assets. It's not like they don't have the assets to give to someone to manage, but they don't want to. And so we manage some of people's assets, but not all of it. But we do incorporate it all into the plan and price it a la carte, sort of in line with the XY model.
Awesome. Yeah. And Michelle was on the podcast talking a lot about your history at the hedge fund. So feel free, callers, to check out Michelle's podcast on XYPN Radio. Ben, tell us about your aha moment okay, you learned about Dave Ramsey, you knew financial planning was where you wanted to go. What was the decision to go and open up your firm versus maybe going and working at a different place?
Sure. A little bit more of my backstory was when I first got off the road, I didn't start off my own business immediately. I went the more conventional route. I joined a large insurance company here, who was actually part of Dave Ramsey's endorsed local provider network. And that's how I was first introduced to how financial planning is conventionally done. And I have to say, I mean, they weren't even all that most upfront in terms of how you would make your money. They just said you could make a lot of money and just give us a few years and it'd be worth your while and you help people. And I thought, okay, well, this sounds great. I'm interested in this. It wasn't probably until 3 months in or so that I started to realize that actually this is all based in commissions. Like, it's amazing how long it took me to realize that that was the only way that I made money of it. You know, my whole vision of what financial planning was going to be wasn't met at all in the within the company. So I stuck it out with that for 18 months trying to make it work, but eventually I was getting a lot of pressure to just go out and make more sales. My investment numbers actually, ironically enough, were doing just fine, but they were primarily an insurance company. My insurance numbers weren't high enough. And so I just said, you know, this isn't how I want to do this. So I transitioned back to doing some local truck driving in the meantime. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to just go out and start my own. I started to talk with Alan Moore even before XY Planning was a network, even before it existed. He was part of NAPFA Genesis at the time. And I was introduced to NAPFA and someone suggested, hey, you should talk to Alan Moore. He's kind of a big mover in that space. Maybe he can give you some good ideas. And at the time he had Serenity, I think Financials, it was the name of the business. And he said, hey, you know, you should join NAPFA and be a fee-only financial advisor. And I had no idea what any of that meant. That was entirely new to me, completely cut off from it, from everything I had. So I left going into truck driving locally with the idea that maybe I would sit down, study for the CFP exam, and then when I had passed the CFP exam, I would come back around. But XY Planning still hadn't existed at that point. I was looking towards Garrett Network, which is what Alan was a part of. And I largely stayed under the radar for a whole year while I prepared for the CFP exam. And then when I re-emerged, XY was then existing, and I decided to go that way.
Awesome. And Ben joined in 2015,
Yes.
which nowadays feels like, oh, you're our veteran.
That's true. It does feel that way.
Yeah. And Michelle, talk to us about what it was like to register your firm. I know you didn't use XYPN services. Did you use a compliance consultant? Did you do it on your own? What was that process like?
I did. Ours was rather unique, and we were already sort of going down the path by this time I started talking to the guys at XY. We had been registered, both SEC and state registered at different periods from 92, or when the laws changed, back in the 90s forward. We had deregistered when we closed the hedge funds, and so we were really re-registering, and ours was such a unique situation that I went ahead and used the outside attorneys that we had been using. Okay. Since that point, XY has done my renewal every year, and that's run very smoothly. I was sort of a unique animal, and it didn't really fit into any of the standards.
Yeah, no, I get it. Did you experience any snags with your uniqueness, or was there any issues at the state level getting registered?
I did not. We registered right at year end, the end of 16, and it was part of it. I mean, we'd been through audits before, so they had, I'm sure, a record of us and our history, and we'd had a very clean record and had not great. I mean, audits are audits, but very smooth and quick turnaround audits. And so, although it was a different model, I assume that they knew the business and it wasn't a big deal. I also registered in Arkansas, which I had not been registered in Arkansas before, but that was smooth sailing as well.
Awesome. But you joined XY a few months before your registration came through, correct?
I did. Yeah, I joined right after the conference. I think I actually joined before I passed the CFP, but I was bound and determined I was not going to take it more than once.
Yeah.
So I know everybody is, and it's a very difficult test. I'll attest to it myself, but fortunately I did pass it on the first round.
Good, awesome. There's always a lot of questions from non-members about the timing of membership. When should I join? And the story is different for everyone. There's really no perfect time to join membership, but we do like to hear different kind of ways into membership.
Not to interrupt you, but in that respect, I think the sooner the better. Obviously, it's a big cost and commitment, and when you don't have any revenues coming in yet. But in the early days, before I was really up and running, I was able to go back and listen to a bunch of different webinars and look at all the different postings. And I spent a lot of time researching and just spent hours and hours on the Mango apps or whatever on the website, figuring it all out.
Good. And that is our ideal. That would be recommended, is that you join a few months before you're interested in getting registered. And then the registration process does take some time. Ben, tell us about your registration process. And Ben is a unique case because Ben went through our initial registration process before it was even in-house at XYPN. That's how long he's been with us.
That's right. Yeah. I was using Vadim, back when Vadim was in the day. Yeah. So, my plan, I joined XYP, and I was actually probably one of the reasons why we had to change the policy, because I was one of the ones harassing, like, we need to get this done. So I had a 2-year time period on whether or not I was going to have to retake any test when I had finished with the prior firm to when I started my own. And so I was down to, I think, just the last 2 to 3 months of which I needed to have my business officially up so that my licenses would transfer over, because I still didn't have the CFP. I had passed the exam, but I didn't have the eligible experience. And so I didn't want to have to sit for, I think, would have been the 64 exam again, which in hindsight, that would have been a minor deal. But so I came in with XYPN with the plan of using their, becoming registered with their compliance department. And, the short story of it all is it probably took 6 weeks from start to finish with the work of what Vadim was able to accomplish at the day. And yeah, it went pretty smoothly. I mean, there were some specific nuances that North Dakota here wanted me to adjust in the service engagement form that we use, but other than that, nothing really to note of. It, just had to go through the steps.
Yeah, wonderful. Michelle, now that you are up and running, we have a lot of questions about compliance. Tell us, just kind of in your own words, what compliance management as a chief compliance officer is like for a state registered RIA.
What I found, and we have not been through an audit yet as under the new RIA, so I'm speaking from past experience, but in general, they have wanted to see that you've done everything, you've checked everything, and it sort of seems silly to check when you're a one-man shop and then you're checking that, yes, I say I did this and I did, and I'll initial it. But that's a lot of what the procedures are in place, and the more you can document and the more that you can show that you've methodically stayed on top and gone back and checked everything on a regular basis, the better off you are, as I understand it. There are, with Smart RIA, they do send out the checklist. And the biggest thing is just to allocate, a few hours a month just to stay on top. It's like anything. If you do a little bit every day, it's never a big deal, or every month, whatever.
Yeah. Well, let that blow up the misconception that compliance takes 40 hours a week. It does not. Ben, tell us about your compliance program and how often you spend kind of staying up to date with what you need to do.
Sure. It's usually a quarterly project, so rather not so much monthly. I just have time set aside on my calendar that says this is time to work on compliance. I don't really kind of have to like asterisk it and everything, because it's not the thing that I want to spend my time on, truthfully. But you just commit to it. I do have a Smart IRA too that I utilize, and has the weekly reminders sent out on Sunday evenings. But yeah, in terms of the details, it's not a large time commitment. I definitely prefer this setup as in the fee-only space versus what I was with under FINRA back in the day. I feel like there's just a lot more latitude that I have in terms of what I can do and what I can't do. And yeah, it goes pretty well. I also bounce. I have a study group that I'm pretty close with. We get together every week, and that tends to be my immediate go-to if we have questions or issues with compliance, because that brings up, there's 7 or 8 of us who will talk about those items, but also just broader other financial planning topics or things within the network or wherever. They're kind of our go-to. We all get together and plug each other first, I suppose, if we need some help.
Wonderful. Staying on that topic, Ben, tell us about your study group. How did you meet them? And what is that an accurate reflection of kind of the community at large of XY?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's the biggest asset I've received at XY. I think a few things for folks who are interested. I mean, everything that I have in terms of my business is only because of XYPN. Everything's completely from it in many ways. I've done a lot of sales coaching through Nancy Bleaky, who ultimately I came in contact with XY. My study group is all current XYPN members, and we all happen to join together. Back in the day, a couple of years ago, we've been meeting for 2.5 years. I was aware that I needed to be connecting with some other group of people on a more regular basis, just to talk about everything, talk about life to some extent, I mean, just how's it going, and be able to share our triumphs and our struggles. So I reached out to a group that had formed about 6 months prior to me looking, and I just knocked on the door and said, hey, I'm interested. Would you mind me showing up? And they said, oh, wow, that's interesting. You have a tax background, which I did. I was an enrolled agent only by 6 months, but they didn't need to know that. And so they brought me on because, I was going to be the local tax expert, right? So, and I've grown into that for what it's worth over the years. But yeah, we started meeting, and we actually have some protocol at this point of who can join and who can't, and what we want the group to be and our identity, and I wouldn't be able to enter or join as easily today as I did 2.5 years ago, which is kind of funny, but we have a really solid group, and it's wonderful. I wouldn't be in business without them. So
yeah, wonderful. I think that is one of the hardest things for our advisors, and maybe one of the more underestimated aspects of business ownership is that it's lonely. I mean, you both work out of your homes sometimes, it's just not the easiest thing to do on your own. So plugging you into the community is definitely a goal of XYPN. Michelle, talk to us about your experience with the XY community. I know you've attended XY Live and XYPN Live and things like that. What have you found to be unique about our community?
Over the first year or so, it was really on a one-off basis. I was connecting with a lot of the people that I met and reaching out to them individually. And then because I'm in Dallas, there's a pretty good community through FPA and also some XY members. So when I would go to the FPA meetings, I would always see some of my fellow XY members there and stay in touch. About a year ago, and thanks to Maddie, I did get into sort of a veteran group. I was a unique beast because I'd had a business for 20 years. So it was sort of like my issues were sort of different. And I also have a business partner that does investments. So I'm not all alone, which has been very helpful to have somebody else to talk to. But the study group that I'm in now is just awesome. We actually met yesterday morning. We had our meeting, and we meet every month, and it's really already, I feel like there are people I can pick up my phone and call at any time. They're there for me. So.
Wonderful.
Totally.
Wonderful. That's so good to hear. Okay, let's get into some misconceptions. We had someone submit a question about age. Tell us about what your take is on the age group of XY. If you're 45, are you going to be the oldest folk in the group, Michelle?
Not at all. And I do think that the group has gotten, as we've gotten more credibility, the group has gotten a little more maturity. When I came in 16, I felt like I was bringing the average age up a little bit. By 17, there were all ages there, and this past year in St. Louis, that was especially the case. I think that we all come from different backgrounds, but it's really not it's not a young person's group. And even serving the people, it's amazing how many 30, 40, 50-year-olds are real high earners that need our fee-only a la carte type approach, and they're willing to pay for it, and they're very enthusiastic about participating in it. And I think they really like having that sort of independence of the asset management. And I don't know about other people's practices, but ours covers a lot of different things. And so the group has really helped me with that too, of how to communicate and all those different aspects, and how to ask the best questions, and really be there for our clients to get them to open up.
Love it. Ben, as a career changer, did you feel like XY had the tools that you needed to be able to start and launch your firm?
Yeah, totally. Again, I am where I am today because of XYPN. I was with either prior company previously for a while, but I can't say there was a lot, but I carried over from that. It was a few clients. I really just wanted to trailblaze a whole other way of doing financial planning. I was ecstatic to find that there was XY coming together, XY planning. I was interested in Garrett Network, as I had suggested previously, and the hourly fee model was appealing. But I wasn't completely won over. That wasn't a slam dunk. I was just going to go with them because that was the only option. So I think when I saw and realized that XY planning now existed, and especially with the model that they were proposing, that Michael Kitsis was associated with them, I was far enough in the business to know him by name. I the focus on the younger generations, it hit on all the right notes. I mean, it's checking all the boxes for me. So yeah, I think as time has gone along, XY has just continued to mature too. Not just simply in age, but in terms of the services and what's offered and the manner in which it's offered. I've been just continually pleased with how the network has grown. So, if anything, when I first joined, I think I was number 97 out of the network. We're probably plus 800 or maybe plus 900 at this point. I'm not sure. I know it just keeps growing. So we were definitely a much smaller knit community early on. I initially even tried to go back to all the early on Mango posts from the very beginning of the network and read them all. And you wouldn't dare do that today. I don't know if you even could feasibly do it, but I mean, it was much smaller back in the day, but now it's great to see the diversity and the extent of participants. I really, really, really love the extent of education that's present. The fact that XYPN requires everyone to be a certified financial planner, and that many, many, many folks have other areas of expertise, whether it's in law, investments, taxes.
Mm-hmm.
It's all across the board. I really love that about the network. It's a fantastic aspect.
Great. And that is a misconception that we are all CFPs. We are about 68% CFPs in the network. About 25% of the folks are going about getting their CFP, and then the others have decided either not to pursue it or not at this time. What Ben alluded to is that you do have to be a certified financial planner to be listed on our Find an Advisor profile page.
And that does sorry to cut you off, Maddie, but that does apply to me actually, because for the first year and a half, I wasn't a certified financial planner. I passed the exam, but I still needed further work experience. So I was ultimately getting it through my business, but that was just slow in coming as I was still working on the business part-time. So I finally, thankfully, became a CFP about 18 months ago. But yeah, I trust definitely a big thumbs up, But nonetheless, I really appreciate and value that emphasis within the network. I mean, it's just present whether or not it's people intend it to be. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Michelle, let's get back to something you were talking about last answer about how willing folks are to take you up on your services. A misconception is, do young people actually need planning? Go ahead and speak to your experience servicing 20 to 30 to 40-year-olds.
I have found that it's almost easy, especially our model. When you deal with a lot of the baby boomers, they're so used to assets under management, and they'll meet with me and they'll say, I mean, it just takes a little education, but they'll say, well, I don't have to pay for that now. And my response is sort of, well, you get what you pay for. So, well, just listen to let's talk about what you need and what all they're doing for you. And what you find is that people are very receptive to what we're offering, and they want someone that's really looking at their whole life, that's not just trying to asset gather and accumulate assets and get them into different investments. Really, your money's your tool, and to really stress that and dealing with the people we're in, I think that a lot of the younger people get it where the older ones didn't. To tell you the truth, I think you just get used to what you've had, and people don't realize when the costs are hidden how much they're actually paid. One thing that I think was very beneficial, and it happened about the time I came into this, was with all the DOL and just the press in general. I have a lot of people that search fee-only fiduciary, and they find me on Google. And I guess that's the first thing I do, is go and look at someone's website, and if I ever get a referral for someone. But when the tables are turned, I'm still I'm old enough to be surprised when people will look me up on the internet and call and tell me their whole life story. But that's how most of my people have found me.
Oh, that's so wonderful. Then have you felt that young people are receptive to this kind of planning?
I do. I definitely think people are receptive to it. I pick up quite a few clients who are finding me through resources such as NAPFA. So they're already, they tend to be educated a little bit into the concept of fee-only financial planning. I don't have to educate them on that. I don't do really a lot of AUM-based fees just because it doesn't make a lot of sense in most times for the client model. I'm not going necessarily after clients who have accumulated a large amount of assets. Although, I mean, as time has come along, I'm picking up assets here and there from folks who have, usually it's an old 401k and, they need to pass something along. But yeah, it's a little bit of an explanation. It's definitely a change. I think it just depends on a client by client. I mean, there are some clients that there's almost no explanation. They know what they want. They realize that this model's out there, and they're just happy that I'm someone there they can speak with, and we get along. And so we just there goes the business. I mean, everything's connected. Other folks, truthfully, actually, my biggest client was more of the more conventional model. Similarly aged, fairly young, but didn't really understand why we were doing this approach and struggled. He took some of that's just because of his personality. He likes to really reflect on his decisions and not want to do anything on a knee-jerk reaction. He probably was about an 18-month courtship to slowly convince him and explain away why feeling was a better way to go. And even then, I mean, he still kind of tiptoed himself into the water. But now that he's been with me for 18 months, 24 months, I think he's totally sold. Like he loves what we do and how I work with him. And that I think his experience of the service that I'm offering versus what he was receiving is a lot broader and more in depth.
Wonderful. Would you talk to us a little bit about kind of what your annual service calendar is and on a monthly basis, what that relationship is? We've had several questions about just the implementation of the monthly retainer model. Does it make sense? Does it actually work in practice?
Sure. So when I'm looking at clients, it's dependent upon really their income. What I've realized over time is that the folks who are going to meet with you on an ongoing retainer basis are going to be your high income earners. And what exactly who is high income is going to vary, I think, on your region. Up in these parts, 125, 150 household income, I would start to describe as high income. I realize maybe out on the coast, you would have to be in the $350,000, $400,000 range before you might assign that to somebody. But usually it's at that point, there just tends to be enough changes that they're in their career that's going on. Some of my core clients who I meet with on a quarterly basis, they just have changes all the time. They're either moving, they're getting married, they're having kids, they've got another job. I mean, one of my biggest clients has had 3 jobs in the last 2.5 years. And it's not because, he's a poor employee. He's just got opportunities that keep popping up and he's chasing them down, So reviewing benefits and moving old 401ks over and double checking all this stuff, this is where it makes a lot of sense. And they, in that circumstance, want to be meeting with somebody more than just once a year. So we will be meeting quarterly in those circumstances. But I have other clients who, honestly, their situation's pretty simple. It's straightforward. There's not a lot of complexity. Once we've worked through everything, like, them changing jobs would be a really big deal. And that's something they would plan to do, quite honestly. So once a year meetings, once we've worked through everything, is much more appropriate. And so I've adjusted my services, my fees based off of the clientele. I don't have a mandate at this point, although I've considered it that if your income's above, let's say, $300,000, we would just plan, especially if you're young, we're just going to have quarterly meetings because the likelihood of you needing to keep meeting with me more, especially more than once a year, is pretty high. But if you're in a $100,000 range or less, certainly, to meet more than once a year is probably overkill.
Yeah, wonderful. Michelle, what's your experience been implementing the monthly retainer model and sharing that with your clients?
Ours, we stress that it's an annual, we call ours a concierge fee or concierge plan because it's very similar to the concierge doctor where they contact us or we contact them whenever anything comes up. But we don't have a certain set number of meetings for any of our clients. After the first year is very structured and we do have a set number, or not pretty much a set number and a sort of a routine that we go through. I won't go into it now, but I did describe it on the podcast if anybody cares to go through sort of what those meetings are. It's called the Paradigm Guides, and there's several steps that we go through. A lot of ours is intrinsic discovery and really getting in and understanding their money history and what makes them tick and what do they want their life to look like. And so that's a lot of, early on, there's a lot more time invested on doing that. But then once we sort of get the foundation there, already we've had, unfortunately, some people I've had 2 different clients who have lost a parent so far, and some other things that are going on. And obviously with job changes and children and preparing for college and all those kinds of things, that impacts it too. So it's they know I'm available, and a lot of times I'll just shoot an email and we can get back to them in email. And you may or may not have meetings, but they know we're around and we're open to to meeting with them whenever they need us. And nobody's abused that at all. The other thing, like at year end, we did tax estimates for a lot of our clients with the tax withholding tables. Unfortunately, there's going to be a lot of people that have negative surprises when they go to do their taxes this year. And so we went through with a lot of them, and they were so appreciative, because then, nobody wants to know that they're going to owe $4,000, but they'd like to know now and have a few months to plan for it, then find out on April 14th. So that was very well received as well.
Awesome. And do you manage investments for your clients, Michelle?
We do. My business partner does that side of it. He's a CFA, and we've worked together from the 90s, from the hedge fund days. So he's my, I guess, my professional spouse, significant other, daytime significant other. And we obviously, having worked together for 24 years, we know each other pretty well.
Cool.
But he handles all that side of it. And then I handle more the planning, and I'm sort of the face with the clients, and he's behind the scenes more.
Sure. And Ben, how did you choose your fee structure? How did you know how much to charge your clients?
I think it's just something that's evolved over time. I've increased my fees bit by bit as I've become more comfortable and confident, and as I've kind of been able to punch the numbers ahead and see, it's funny at times as a planner, I need to do my own planning and see how this is all going to pin out or pencil out, right? I think early on I was just happy to get some business and to get things working, and just to have start getting a feel for the processes. But as time goes along and you've picked up those clients and you're getting a better feel of how everything goes, you start to become more interested in, okay, just how much are we paying you? Because you get busy, and you can only just take on so much for the price. I've developed a model that I'm pretty pleased with. This was ultimately borrowed from another member who had suggested this a few years back when they first joined. It's based off of income, net worth, and meeting frequency in terms of how I determine the fee. And I've got a little chart or schema that I use. And so as your income increases, I have the monthly fee increasing accordingly. And then as your net worth increases, the fee increases. And so you can kind of think diagonally too. If income and net worth are both increasing, then the fees would be bumping up. And so as it's set up now every odd year, so this year actually, upcoming, I do my meeting, our service engagement discussion. And so we'll be looking at seeing where clients are at with their net worths and in their incomes, and whether or not a change in fee is merited or needed. But the net worth, it isn't just simply assets under management, and it's not whether or not the money's being managed by me either. I include in that equity in the home, because I've canceled quite a few folks who have gotten buyer's fever, who were willing to just jump ship and move into another property, but weren't aware of all the cost associated with that move, especially when it comes to restarting at ground zero with your mortgage and the height of the interest. And so sometimes there's benefits. We want to take into account the tax deduction. Of course, that's kind of gone away now with the change for the tax law, but just being able to have that full discussion with the client about, maybe a move really isn't merited, especially if you're at a 90% mark with how satisfied you are with the house, and you're only moving because it has a little bit bigger of a backyard. Like, well, that move might cost you $20,000 or more. Once you factor it all at $30,000, maybe you should just go to a park or something for that kind of money, right? I mean, it's what's suggested. So I include equity in the home as part of the fee, because I feel like I'm protecting that equity at times as I'm looking at their financial situation. So yeah, it's a combination of all three factors in terms of how we settle out on the monthly fee.
Yeah, great. This caller tonight, or a caller tonight, submitted this question. As someone working in San Francisco, we wonder how many XY advisors are able to build businesses beyond being solo, if they want to, on what seems like pretty low monthly retainers. How feasible is it to grow a business this way? Michelle?
I guess in every market, it depends on what you're charging and what the income levels are. We're in Dallas, so it's not San Francisco prices, but it's still a lot more expensive than my office in Arkansas. But we're charging $5,000 as our minimum coming in now for the initial plan, and then the concierge is similar to that in future years. I think you could grow a pretty good sized business. That's definitely our longer term goal, is to grow the business and bring in a next generation of advisors that will grow into that. And really, I want Paradigm to continue with or without me. And so that's our long-term goal. And I think it's very doable, running the numbers and looking at it. But it just depends on your situation and how many clients you want to have, and the per head, and how much service you're giving to each client.
Yeah.
You have to look at all the different aspects of it.
Definitely. I'm always impressed with the diversity of what types of businesses our members are building. It really does come down to where they're located and who they want to work with. Ben, any response to that question?
Sure. Well, I don't think you're necessarily geographically limited. Now, I mean, if you're in the San Francisco area, you're definitely going to be dealing with quite a few folks who have a higher income that would be able to justify paying a decent amount for you in a monthly fee that would cover your business expenses. But I mean, one of my clients is out of the San Francisco Bay Area, right? So I mean, there's a little bit of a geo arbitrage taking place where my expenses here to run my firm in Bismarck, North Dakota, isn't anywhere near as expensive as they are in San Francisco, and yet I'm working with a client from that area who makes very good money. So I think it's going to be somewhat focused on where you want to live and who you want to be going after client-wise. I mean, to make the business go, you're going to have to focus on someone either who has a large net worth as clients or who has a high income. Certainly, if you're going to be in San Francisco, you're not going to be able to service folks who are your average middle American, let's say your household income of $75,000 to $100,000, and make a business go very well, especially living in San Francisco. Like that just wouldn't make sense. So I do think one way or the other, you're going to have to either have clients who have some money or who have clients who have the ability to have some money for it to go, or it's a combination of those two. But to not have that at all, I think you would struggle eventually to have a business go.
Great. Thanks for your input on that. Of course, lots of misconceptions about how much it costs to start a business. I know that our newest first year budget template shows 3 different ways of starting businesses: super lean to more liberal in terms of how much went into it. Ben, would you talk to us about kind of your upfront expenses, and, you know, be as open as you want about it? I'm not asking for any specific dollar amounts, but can you start a business anywhere from $10,000 to $30,000? And what was your experience with those expenses in the first year?
Yeah, you certainly can. I mean, that's exactly what I started it for. So while I was driving truck in between working for the prior insurance company and ultimately launching my own firm, we were saving money aside, my wife and I, in anticipation of starting the business. So we had about $20,000 saved when it started, which was enough to get us through about the first 12 to 18 months of it being pretty lean, without much client revenue to cover any of our expenses. I think total out-of-pocket cost was probably around 25, maybe as much as 30. I'm not sure on that number, but it probably around that 25 mark for sure. When it was all said and done, before the business fully was self-sustaining and ultimately producing a profit to us. So yeah, 10,000, honestly, I think would be pretty lean. You'd have to have some pretty strong marketing in place for you to get by with just 10,000. I mean, your out-of-pocket immediate expenses of what it takes to run the business could be as little as 10,000. The other part of what you're adding to that is you covering your expenses of running the business, because the business isn't covering it. And that's really, I probably could, 10 to 15 would have been enough, I think, just to get her up and running. It was the other 10,000 came from it not having enough client revenue.
Yeah. And, you know, you've always got to remember that if you're not going to be working, you need to take that into account too, the lack of income. Right. Michelle, talk to us about your expenses. And I know your story is a bit different because Paradigm was around before this.
Yeah, it was. From the actual, what it would cost you, what you'd need to spend, I think the numbers that XY has provided make sense. I did do a lot more travel. I went to all the conferences and really tried to dial it up. I also, I guess, don't have 20 years to build this business that some of the younger folks have. So I was more ambitious in that respect as far as how fast I grew it. The biggest expense isn't the expense of the business. It's the expense of maintaining your livelihood while you grow the business. So, depending on what situation you're in, if you've got kids or a spouse that can, help you with that, but you've still got mortgages or rent, you still have food, you still have all your other expenses. And I think that's the part that sometimes people forget about, is they save the money to fund the business, but do they have the money in place to fund their livelihood while they grow the business? Because you're not going to be getting any income for 1 to 3 years, probably 2 to 3 years, looking at most of them and how they grow. So that would be the biggest, I think, pitfall that I see is, and that's true with any business, whether you're running a restaurant or retail or whatever, it's having that money to continue your livelihood in a frugal manner, but you still got to have a roof over your head and food in your belly. So
absolutely. Before this webinar, we had someone submit a question about, given both of your tax backgrounds, or at least Ben's tax background, why did you or did you ever consider ACP, the Alliance for Comprehensive Planners, as an option for you before going with XY, since they market as tax focused? Could you talk to us about that decision, Ben?
Yeah, it's a good question. I wasn't aware of ACP before I joined the network. It wasn't until probably being part of XYPN for a couple months. So I mean, I suppose it's a pretty clear answer in that regard. I wasn't even aware of it as an option. I think some of it, though, I would have probably still gone with XY Planning Network just because the upfront cost wasn't as high. And I'm very familiar with the Alliance of Comprehensive Planners. I've had conversations with them. I've thought of joining them in addition to XYPN. And I don't think this is an exclusive decision either, or I know of other XYPN members who are a member of ACP. So this isn't one way or the other. I think both networks have their strengths and reasons why you would want to be part of both. And it's truthfully something I still entertain from time to time, although I don't see it as a driving, I suppose it's not, if I were to join, it wouldn't be out of dissatisfaction with XYPN, that's for sure. It would be because I felt like it was just another source of complementation to what I want to be doing as a business. I think, XY certainly has a much more thriving network and sense of growth, a lot of more vitality to it. The ACP has been around, and their membership, although they tend to be a little more veteran and seasoned and perhaps have a higher degree of expertise in the way that they work, are just not as large. So that has its pluses and minuses too. You connect, I think, with other members better. But yeah, I suppose the short answer to it all is I just simply didn't know that the ACP existed before I joined XY.
Great, awesome. Michelle, how about you?
Yeah, I actually did know that ACP existed, and I looked at both. At some point, I probably will be a member of both. Like Ben, I think that you get very different things from both of them, and I would never give up my XY membership for. I think this one's been more valuable, not just because I'm on this call, but I mean, looking at what I've done, I've been an XY member for 2 years, and I still have not become an ACP member at this point. It was more a lot of what Ben said. It's a young, thriving population. There's just a lot of energy and livelihood and all the people that you meet, and everybody's very energetic and thriving in what they want to do. I was a tax accountant in my first career, and so as much as I know taxes and use tax planning in my practice, I have no interest in doing tax returns. And so from that standpoint, that having a combination practice was not something I was personally interested in doing. That's what drove me into the investment world after three busy seasons the first time.
Awesome. Talk to us a little bit about this misconception that people want in-person planners. Michelle?
I've seen what the XY people have been able to do virtually, and it makes a lot of sense. My preference, I'm enough old school that I actually do like to meet at least once all my clients. And in the early days, we do have more in-person meetings, but even my ones that are pretty close in proximity to me, it would take them 5 minutes to come to my office. They still want to just hop on and share a screen and go through what everybody's busy, and you just don't need to go sit and waste all the time, or not waste the time, but that spend all the time in person, it's not an efficient use of your time and energy. And I think our clients don't necessarily want to do that. They want to know that they can reach us via phone, email, or in person, depending on what they want and need at the time.
Yeah. Awesome. Ben, I know you mentioned working with someone in San Fran.
Right. Yeah, I'm entirely virtual, right? Every now and again, I will meet with clients, face to face virtually in a coffee shop here, who want to meet face to face. But even the clients that I had initially wanted to have that sort of interaction have migrated into meeting virtually. I have some clients from the local area that I haven't even met in person yet, and they live just a couple miles from each other, which is kind of crazy. But I have zero pushback from anybody who's younger on meeting virtually. Like, they just are totally fine with it. I can't tell you how many nursing mothers I've had off camera or tending to the kiddos, or folks in their pajamas with bedhead, or like in their Saturday casuals or whatever. Like, it's like the norm. I've never seen anybody dressed up in our virtual meeting, and I don't know why you would, right? I'm definitely the one who's the most dressed up in the meeting. So and that's really across the board. I like meeting that way. I do think you do lose some from not meeting in person. There are benefits to that, but it's not enough. I think there's a lot of cost associated with meeting in person, not to mention like the overhead of an office or anything. And there's alternatives in that space too, but it is like I just prefer the efficiency of being able to step down into my office, which is downstairs here. My commute from the bedroom to my office space is like 100 feet, right? And so I just love that. I love the fact that I'm at work right away, and if I need to meet with somebody, we can jump on a call. Like, there's just nothing to it. So I'm a big fan of the virtual setup.
Awesome. Michelle, talk to us about kind of your goals for your firm. I know that there's always kind of a debate. Do I go lifestyle or do I go enterprise and multi-advisor? Where are you settling in, and I know you talked about wanting to train up the next generation, which is freaking awesome. Can XY members define what they want to build?
Oh, I think so. Yeah. I mean, just to hear Ben talk of working downstairs, my office is 5 minutes away, but I like going into the office and sort of separating those two, just for me personally. But yeah, you can build, and I've seen so many people build a lifestyle practice too. And it really doesn't matter. It's more about, just like with our clients, it's what do you want your life to look like, and how are you going to get there? And there's so many ways to skin a cat. So I think it's building whatever you want to build for you and for your family. So that's sort of the approach that I've taken as well. I just like being around people, and my number one thing that I love to do the most is learning and teaching. And so to be able to pay it forward, I had some fabulous mentors over the years. And they were there for me, and they helped me be who I am today. And I guess I'm at a different stage of my life, but that's sort of what's driving me wanting to pay it forward and grow that next generation, is do for people what other people did for me.
Oh, so inspiring. And that's such a shared mentality among so many of our advisors. All of you are so grateful for the folks that helped you get here, whether they be XY members or not. So many of you come from this with the direction of, I want to help others, not just clients, but other advisors do this. And I think that goes back to the heart of kind of XY's culture, which is collaboration and not competition. And that really just bleeds through so many conversations that we have with our advisors. Ben, any comments on that?
In terms of the lifestyle business or the competition collaboration component, or both?
You're welcome to address both, but kind of you're building a different business, and tell us about what went into that.
Sure. I suppose a little bit from the lifestyle angle, it's taken time. I haven't spent much time sharing this, but I had worked part-time for about 4.5 years getting the business off the ground. And it's some of that's because I'm in a situation, family-wise, where my wife does work, but she doesn't provide enough income to be able to fully support us. So there was always need for me to be able to provide additional income in order to keep things going. And so that lifestyle, your livelihood component that Michelle mentioned about earlier is very real. It's definitely, how are we going to keep this business going and everything else? But as time has gone along, I now work from home full-time with clients. I do think you have to, if you're going to work full time from home as I do, you have to have a certain degree where you enjoy solitariness, because it does have that component to it. But I have other ways in which I can connect with people even outside of clients, or if maybe some of it's just a matter of taking a walk in the neighborhood. I just love the fact of that my life is just so bundled together, and that there's not, that I don't have to spend my evenings spending half the evening driving to go have a client appointment. There's a lot of times I'm with my family right up until the last 15 to 20 minutes before I have the appointment, and then I can do my final meeting prep and then walk right into the meeting. And then as soon as the meeting's done, I can walk back out outside the room, and there I am with my family again. And that's just fantastic. Something my wife appreciates. It's something I appreciate. The flexibility I have in the business. Those are all good things. So, and then the last component too, I mean, I do think XYPN is totally about collaboration and not competition. I've gotten so many great, I mean, everything my business is because of XYPN and what's been shared. And it's a little bit of a hodgepodge, but you just kind of grab here and there the things that work for you and make sense and you want to incorporate, and it now becomes your business. And I think it helps that we're not all in the local market. I don't think other XYP members even would be as generous if I was directly competing maybe with some local clientele. But even then, I don't know if we have a geographical competition as much anymore. It's going to be more of a professional competition as things I think evolve around. And I just have found the assistance of so many XYPN members, folks I can just send an email to or instant message and say, hey, can we meet? I would be interested in picking your brain for a few things. And, they always respond back and say, yeah, I'd love to, whatever I can do to help you out. So It's fantastic on the part of the network in that regard.
Awesome. Well, folks, we're quickly approaching the end of this hour, and I promised Ben and Michelle that this would go by quickly. It really, really does. I hope all of you guys appreciate it. I do have, of course, another question for our caller, so hang tight. But before we do, I hope that all of you found that this conversation to be helpful. I could list off at least 20 misconceptions that we addressed tonight, and I so appreciate Michelle and Ben's willingness to talk openly and transparently about what it took to build a firm like this, of what both of them are building. I hope that you guys got a taste of what XYPN membership is like and what our community is like. Be sure every month we do host these webinars, and it's super important that if you're considering this opportunity to start and run and grow whatever firm you have or begin a firm, that you have an opportunity to learn what XY offers. This really is one of our best avenues to do so. So keep coming back every month to these calls, because we do address different things and you'll learn from different advisors about what they've built. Next month, as I mentioned, is going to be all about fees, and that is anecdotally speaking, probably one of the most common things I talk to advisors about. It's either niche or fees are the two most evolving things for our advisors. It's like none of them are ever static. So please do come back next month and join two other, actually we're gonna have 3 other members on that call next month. But before we wrap up, I would love to ask Michelle, your piece of advice for anyone who's on this call that's thinking about doing this. What piece of advice would you give them?
I would think, obviously we talked about having your savings in place, but really just go for it. And Ben's a perfect example. You can do it part-time and supplement and find some other ways to supplement your income, but don't feel like you have to be totally ready. Go on and jump in there and learn and evolve as you go. It doesn't have to be all ironed out. And that was one thing I kept doing all this research and trying to figure out what was the perfect model. And it's totally evolved from, I thought I had the perfect model. And the one thing is you definitely don't charge enough. We feel like there's so much to know, but our clients, we know so much more than they do. And we're so beneficial to them, even though we've got a lot more to learn. Just give yourself credit for all you know and all you've done, because we're a huge benefit for our clients.
Yeah. Well said. Thank you, Michelle. Ben, piece of advice for the folks who are on the fence of either starting or jumping into membership or the firm ownership world?
Well, I think Michelle stole my thunder, so I don't really have anything to share. But I would say the same thing. I mean, jump in. I'm an achiever by trait. If you go to Nancy Bleaky's sales trainings, you'll know what that means. But so I'm not one who will necessarily deliberate forever on a decision. If it looks good for me, I'm going to jump in and move on with it, and we'll just figure it out as we go along. So that's what I've made of my life and of myself and where I'm at today. And I wouldn't let you sit and think on it too long. There's a lot of benefits with being part of XYPN, and I know early on I paid attention to how much I was paying every month, and like, am I getting my money's worth? You know, like it's costing me like, I don't know, $5 a day, or what I suppose it was $10 a day or something. I mean, it was running in my head, but I mean, that was years ago. Like I'm not even aware any longer of what XYPN cost. I mean, not like in a mental capacity. Like it's part of one of the costs. It's just part of cost of doing business, and it's been great. So I think you will evolve and ease into this. And I just I wouldn't, if you want to do this, do it. So.
Awesome. Wonderful. Well, folks, that's it. It's 8 o'clock in the mountains out here. Thank you both again for your wonderful feedback and just chatting tonight. Everyone, callers, do keep your eyes peeled for the little treat in your inbox that's coming your way for XYPN Live. If you do come, I get to give you an in-person high five, and maybe you'll be lucky enough to chat with these two if they're going to be in attendance. But everyone have a safe, wonderful, and happy new year, and I will see you all back here next month. Ben and Michelle, thank you again. We'll talk soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Maddie. It's my pleasure.